Check this out. It's impossible. It's impossible for the New Testament people to be the Hebrews from the Old Testament. You see, it should have been a continuous story or continuous history uninterrupted if the New Testament people were kin to the people in the Tanakh. You see, and then they would only have to be kin to that 1% that was brung from Babylon, a tenth. You know, the prophet Isaiah had already summed up our whole captivity. He even was told when it was finna be over with. You see what I'm saying? And this was in like 725 BC. This gonna be 7 years. This gonna be 3 years before those Sephardic Jews, the Amorites from Babylon, the Babylonian scribes. You know, they was Babylonian scribes. The people that was placed in our land in Samaria in 722 BC. Okay, Prophet Isaiah summed our whole heritage up. We was on that Egyptian religion. We was messed up. The northern kingdom wouldn't come up off of it. You know, that's what caused the Assyrian captivity. You know, we was hiring the Assyrians, Syria, to fight Judah. And the Assyrians, we would hire them to do our dirty work. Well, the Creator turned them on us. You see what I'm saying? Turned them into enemies on us. And the Assyrians took 3 tribes. And that's where that 10 lost tribe mess come from. That 10 lost tribe doctrine and lie that a whole bunch of you Hebrews hold on to. You know, I hope that I have enough time to go into all that. But it's some videos on YouTube, Israelite Brotherhood, that explain, you know, some of this. But anyway, the prophet Isaiah in 725 BC laid our whole captivity out because we kept playing with that Egyptian religion and we wouldn't do right. And you know, he asked the Creator how long, and the Creator said this gonna be Isaiah chapter 6. And prophet Isaiah put us to sleep. And prophet Isaiah said, so I'm not gonna read the whole chapter. I'm gonna get down to the most important verses. All right. And he said, go tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. You know, that's the state that you're in now. A whole bunch of you Hebrews. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert and be healed. You see, we done transgressed the law too much. It was over with. You know, it was downhill after he had said this. And some of us, you know, you brothers and sisters whose heart is heavy and eyes that won't hear, you own that Queen of Heaven religion, that the Holy Mother and Son, and that the Catholic Church created Christianity off of, you know, that they broke it down because the Catholic Church had control of the mother and son worship, and how when they fragmented and they organization broke up and fractured, and how that they was only allowed to worship the son. But it's still a continuous wrong doctrine, and I'm gonna try to explain that. But anyway, in 725 BC, prophet Isaiah was putting us to sleep. Then, let me see, make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their ears, and hear with their ears, and understand, and their heart be converted and be healed. Then said I, this is what prophet Isaiah said, Elohim, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabited, and the houses without men, and the land be utterly desolate. The only time that the land was utterly desolate was during the Babylonian wars and the Babylonian captivity, when we had ran into Egypt and said we didn't want to do the covenant no more. The 99%. The 99% ran into Africa and said we didn't want to do the covenant no more, and that we was going into Egypt, Africa, to do the Egyptian religion. And that 1% A tenth was taken to Babylon. This gonna be like maybe 160 some years later, after prophet Isaiah said, this in 725 BC and 588 BC. This is what we said. Minus 588 BC. This when the land was utterly destroyed and wasn't nobody in it for 50 years. The millions went into Africa, and that 1% was taken to Babylon. And this, chapter 44, verse 2 of Jeremiah. This said the Elohim of hosts, the Yah of Israel, ye have seen all the evil that I have brought upon Jerusalem and upon all the cities of Judah, and behold, this day they are a desolation, and no man dwelleth therein. You see, we was, either in Africa or you was in Babylon, gone to Babylon. All right, so that came to pass, what prophet Isaiah said. All right, let me start, over at 11, verse 11. Chapter 6, verse 11. Then said I, Elohim, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without men, and the land be utterly desolate. And the Elohim have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. All right, the only time people was removed far away was during the Babylonian captivity. Because them Hebrews that was taken to Assyria, they come home, and that's kind of explained in the Exile, the satire history of Egypt, and prophet Isaiah going to that, and I'm gonna try to cover that too real quick. All right, when prophet Isaiah said that and the Elohim have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land, that happened in the book of Jeremiah at the same time that the land was empty. You see, when it was empty for 50 years, because you was either in Africa or you was in gone to Babylon at 10th. Well, this is what we said, and this is the forsaking in the great forsaking in the land. This was our last act. It was over with. When you go to chapter 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18, we said that we wasn't going to do the covenant no more, and that we was going into Egypt to live and worship. Egypt is part of the Sahara, and this is what we said. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, all the people that dwelled in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, as for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do whatsoever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of food, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the by famine. So that happened just like prophet Isaiah had prophesied. That happened. And then he said this, and the Elohim had removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land, but yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, and shall be eaten up, destroyed, as a teal tree, and as an oak, when whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves. That's a dead tree. Any leaves falling off a tree, it is going into hibernation. That tree shut down. You know what I'm saying? For a season. It's over with. You know what I'm saying? And that's what happened to us. The exiles were destroyed. Let me do this again. But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, and shall be eaten as a teal tree, and as an oak, whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves. So the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. that happened to the exiles that was brung back. If you read the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, they'll tell you it was over with. Matter of fact, the prophet Ezra said he couldn't even believe how long they was still on the land from the sinning that they was doing, and that he couldn't believe that they had escaped. You know what I'm saying? I believe that's Ezra Ezra 9, and that's another thing. When our history was translated by those Babylonian scribes, they pulled a slick move. And all the books are not arranged in this chronological order that it should be in. That's like Ezra and Nehemiah should be back in the back of the book, closing with Ezra, with Malachi and Haggai and the prophet Zechariah. You see, them books should be together, but they got Ezra and Nehemiah in the front. And by the time you be done read them books, and then you got back to the back, you be done forgot what happened in the end. So them Babylonian scribes was real slick when they did that. But we gonna figure it out because we Hebrew Israelites, and this is dealing with our history. Okay, the prophet Ezra, man, he tell you how it was. Man, they had it rough. If you go to Ezra 9, man, I think it's about 9, 10, 9, 10, 9, 15. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Look, and it says, this is Ezra 9:15. O Elohim Yah Israel, thou art righteous, for we remain yet escaped as it is this day. Behold, we are before thee in our trespass, for we cannot stand before thee because of this. They was mixing. And when them exiles come back from Babylon, the enemy poured out all the works on them. They basically didn't have a chance because they throw their women at them. And then we come back and only could live in Judah. And if you read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, you will see that the Israelites from the northern kingdom was with them during the Babylonian kingdom. You know what I'm saying? That's like the prophet Ezekiel was took to the river Chabar and Gazon, the same place where the northern tribes was taken to, the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. Okay, these Hebrews that come back from Babylon sinned so bad that they was messing off, and then they had even had the enemies, the Edomites, the Moabites, the Horites. They all became one under those Amorites, and how they had even moved into the temple and had a spot in the temple, and oh man, it was just all a mess. And you have to read them books, but those books show you that the exiles couldn't have made it into Roman times, because what they did allowed the Greeks to come, and then the Greeks start claiming that they was Hebrews. You got Philo-Lychimus, you got the Ptolemy, all them say that they was Hebrew Israelites, from they brother Philo, he was a Lychimus, and the Lychimus go all the way back to Alexander's generals when they come into the promised land and took Egypt over in the promised land. And then Alexander generals was fighting over his spoils. That's like the Seleucids. That's like that Jesus fella. I'm going to go into their history, and it's sinful. It's real wicked to say that it was a God's son and he went and prayed in an Edomite temple. It's a known historical fact that Herod built that temple in 20 BC. 20 BC, ain't no getting around that. Herod built that temple in 20 BC. He took the temple down that the exiles, Zerubbabel and them, repaired on coming back from Babylon. That man, they had pig blood in it, and it had been destroyed a few times. But Herod took it all the way down to the foundation, and then constructed his own temple that was in building to 70 AD when it was destroyed. How about that Jesus fella had to be real stupid, for the simple fact is that he didn't know Hebrew history. See, and then let's go back to the people who went into Africa, the 99% who caused us to break down and everything to collapse. The ones that said that they wanted to worship the Queen of Heaven, they was in Africa uh, uh, for 500, almost 600 years by the time Jesus was born. 588 BC, when we ran into Africa, Jesus didn't know nothing about the Queen of Heaven worshipers. He didn't even know nothing about the Edomites had took the land over, and that John Heinekes, a Maccabee, a Amorite Maccabee, them wicked Maccabees, had converted the whole Edomites until, they became one. That when 20 BC come around, her built that temple, that it was a no fuss, and that Jesus Yawashi fella went into it and called it his daddy house, and then fought the people who was gambling and selling stuff in it. It wasn't nothing holy about that temple. And then this to show you how off that you Hebrews history is. In the Babylonian wars, during the Babylonian times, when the whole Hebrew nation went into Africa, but that 10th that prophet Jeremiah spoke of went into Africa, that the Chaldeans had chased us up off the land. They the ones that chased us into Africa, the 99%. And the Chaldeans had Scythians with them. And the Scythians are Ashkenazi. You see what I'm saying? The Scythians and Ashkenazi are the same people, and that's Ashkenazi code name in history is Scythian. Well, if you go to 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 26, you'll see that they chased us into Africa, and the Scythians settled in our land. It's not saying it's here, but in history it is. In the Discopolis cities. The Discopolis cities is throughout the whole New Testament, and that's where all the Scythians settled at, and they settled in Scythopolis. Scythopolis was the head Discopolis city. It was like the capital. And those Scythians who chased us into Africa and burnt the temple down, the first temple down, settled in the Discopolis. And Jesus had them as members. And matter of fact, he partied with them all the time. All the Discopolis cities were held by Scythians and Scythian related relatives that came from Europe. It's like the Romans. That's like a lot of you Hebrews history be off. When y'all say that Jesus fella, when y'all read that verse in Revelation that say that those are the Synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews, but are not, but are the Synagogue of Satan. Guess what? In Jesus' time, in her time, the Sephardi Jews who was placed in our land in 722 BC, they had mixed with all those people because they was from Babylon, and Babylon was like a mixing nation, and they were mixed with everybody, and that's where all the people mixed first, and that's where all the cursed people was from the mixing. And those same people came to the promised land in 722 BC. If you go to 2 Kings, all praise be Almighty, y'all turn right to it. 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 24. All right. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cuddar and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. Well, in 722 BC, all the way down to New Testament times, that's going to be like about 700 years them Jews been in our land. And Sepharvaim covered Sephardic, and Sephardi. They was Amorites. The Amorites founded Babylon. Well, these people come back and got their land back, from us, from us breaking the covenant, saying that we only wanted Egyptian religion. But anyway, they made up the people in the New Testament times, and they was the scribes and the book writers until Ashkenazi come in. And when Ashkenazi come in and kind of lost his control under the Romans, the Sephardi Edomites lost their control during the Roman times, because the Romans and Ashkenazi was like real close, and that's how Christianity got its start, because Ashkenazi was able to get them books and then get the Catholic Church and stuff started, and then they broke off, and all that happened. But anyway, them people in the New Testament were these Edomite Sephardi Jews, and the other ones were Ashkenazi, Scythians, and they made up the New Testament people, and Jesus had them as members. He was trying to convert them. Well, those Scythians burnt the temple down, you know, in the first temple during the Babylonian times. Well, I'm trying to fit all this history and got nothing but a few minutes left. Anyway, the New Testament people, when Jesus said those are the synagogue of Satan and are not the real Jews, is because those Sephardi's had like about a 180 something year start on the Ashkenazi Jews that come in 588 BC with the Chaldeans, and then they start building them synagogues, and then them Sephardi's thought that they should have the only temple, which was her temple, and Jesus and them was mad at those Ashkenazi for building all those synagogues, and they ain't got nothing to do with the fake, y'all calling the Jews fake and Jesus and them supposed to be real. He was talking about those Ashkenazi Jews building those synagogues. You see what I'm saying? And they got synagogues right now today everywhere, and mostly in Ashkenazi control. And Ashkenazi took over the Sephardi way. They have to do what Ashkenazi say those Edomite Sephardis do. You see, that New Testament is a 500-year difference between the closing of the Tanakh and the creation of the New Testament history. In 430 BC, 420 BC, it is when the last book, Malachi, all right, 500 years later, about 100 AD, they create this Jesus story, and it ain't nothing but them Babylonian scribes. You see what I'm saying? And they love God's sons. They love God's sons and creating history and religions coming off God's sons because they are from Babylon, and that's what they do. You see what I'm saying? And y'all caught up in them folks' religion. There wasn't no Hebrews in the Roman era. The last of the Hebrews was killed off. That little tenth was killed off that prophet Isaiah was speaking about happened during Greek times. Them exiles, they made the Greeks roll up 98 years after the book of Malachi closed. The Greeks appeared and killed them off quietly. And those Sephardi Jews who were scholars like the Greeks was, they didn't just too much document that in all detail because that was the end, and then they fused their history with our history. You see what I'm saying? And then they tried to make it a continuous story, but time rolled by. They got a lot of books, the Maccabees and all those books that's outside the Tanakh, the book of Malachi, and didn't continue from there. Those are the Jewish books that the Jews wrote. You see, the Jews have a history too. They had been in our land for almost 1,000 years. You know what I'm saying? By the time that Jesus fella, from 722 BC